Hi everyone, good morning and welcome for another live video AMA. Today, as you can see, I don't just have one guest but two guests. Initially, Ashley was supposed to join me for this live AMA, and luckily Dominic, his co-founder, has been able also to be available to join us at the last minute. So we have been launching the stream like 2-3 minutes late, but hopefully we'll have a bunch of people joining us, and I hope that you have lots of questions for them, because for sure I do. We are going to be live together for about an hour or so, and I do have a bunch of questions planned for them. But if you have any questions anytime, please be sure to jump into the chat, ask it anytime, and I'll make sure to pass it on as soon as I can. And yeah, so that's it for the introduction. I just want to mention just one thing before we start diving into Cyber Alarm and talk to Ashley and Dominic. I just want to say a big thank you for everyone who have been following the channel on YouTube, because we just reached last night the 200 subscribers on YouTube. I know that doesn't sound super impressive, but that's super cool, and for me that's a big milestone, especially as we're live on many platforms. So it's kind of a choice from my part to do that, but that means that channels are not growing as fast as other channels. So it's super cool to have reached these milestones together, and huge thanks to all of you. But anyway, here today we're not here to talk about me or my channel. We're here to talk to Ashley and Dominic, who are co-founders of Cyber Alarm, to talk about their own journey and their own startup. So Ashley, Dominic, I'm super happy to have you today.
Nice to be here. Thank you for the invitation.
Thanks.
Well, it's super cool to have you, especially as I already had a quick chat with Ashley a couple of weeks ago, and I find it super interesting what you've been up to, and especially as your website says that you're going to launch soon. I have plenty of questions, and cybersecurity is also a topic that lots of startups kind of push for later on. So that's the thing that's super interesting what you do, and especially the fact that you're targeting SMEs and small businesses. But anyway, I'll let you introduce yourself first. So we start by the beginning. Can you tell me more about you two, your own journey, background, and also Cyber Alarm, what you're building?
Probably Dom, you should start.
Sure. Okay. So I'm Dominic. My background is in IT. I've got 25 years, something like that. I was, grew up always being a technology guy. Learning about hacking and cybersecurity as a sort of teenager, and trying to follow the American patterns of blue boxing, beige boxing, and all that sort of stuff. But it inevitably moved into IT as a profession, and spent the last 20 years, say 25 years, as an IT engineer, a server engineer, a developer, a network engineer, before moving into roles such as a CTO. And recently as the CISO, the Chief Information Security Officer for the Chicago Mercantile Exchange, before leaving that and founding Cyber Alarm.
And my background's a little bit different. So my name's Ashley. I have worked in creative services for all of my career in marketing and video, run a video agency for 15 years. And my connection to cyber security really is just through Dominic and through our friendship, I guess. We went to school with each other. We've known each other a long time. And the start of my journey with cybersecurity was Dominic coming up with some initial thoughts and ideas that he wanted to float with me probably about 2 years ago. And we haven't been able to in COVID. We went bouldering and climbing every week, and we used to talk about these ideas, and 6 months down the line we were still talking, so we turned it into something more concrete. The idea of creating a service for small businesses that alerted you when you've been hacked or when you're vulnerable. But it I got the energy for it when my business got hacked, and suddenly I got what Dominic had been talking about. Before that, I think I didn't think it was that relevant to me, but suddenly I realized this is something that's so important to millions of businesses, and that's the journey we've gone on, is creating a solution to solve them.
So how does this work?
And that's really the point. I was going to say, I mean, that's the whole point of Cyber Alarm, right? Ashley is a perfect example of what I was thinking about 3 years ago, when I was working as a CISO, and I was spending a ton of money on IT systems, and I had teams of people monitoring and managing all these different solutions. And I was thinking, how does a smaller company, the average company, that doesn't have a £1 million to spend on IT security, how do they deal with this? And because they're just as much a threat. So that was really, it's brilliant that, in a way, it's brilliant that Ashley got hacked, because it proved it to him, and it brought him on board and brought me a co-founder.
Dom assures me
to help.
it wasn't him. I don't know if you can say it on camera.
It wasn't me. Definitely wasn't me.
Okay, yes, no, that's... I love that. So you mentioned that you're targeting early stage and small businesses. So how does it work really for them?
You go for it, Dom.
Well, we've tried to make it as simple as possible, right? Because, as I say, these guys, they don't necessarily have an IT team. Maybe they're not even really that IT literate themselves. To use CyberAlarm, all you do is enter your domain name, enter your email address or your website. Okay, and from that, we will then go out and we enumerate, we work out everything we can about you. So we don't ask you to configure your routers or your switches. We don't ask you to install software. Not that it's particularly challenging, but it's a barrier, and it just makes it harder for people to sign up. It makes it harder for people to use this system when they don't have time to manage all their PCs, when maybe they don't understand, what is a router and how do I configure my DNS settings to reroute mail through somebody else. That's the normal solution, right? Is some configuration or something you installed on your server. Well, if you don't know how you configured your system, and if you don't have a server, how can you get cybersecurity? So we just take your domain name, and from that we go and work out everything else we need.
I think what's very powerful about it is actually, and one of our biggest challenges, and my role as the kind of customer voice in this, I'm coming at it from the customer's perspective because I've had the problem myself, is cybersecurity to someone like me. Obviously now I'm much more knowledgeable about cybersecurity, but go back 3 years ago, it wasn't even on my list. Do you know what I mean? It wasn't something I was thinking about. It was something that happened to other people. So the fact that you very soon will be able to go on the CyberAlarm website, just put in your email address, your domain, and that we then tell you, right, you've got some issues here, you've got some alarms, you've got some warnings, and what the service is all about is then presenting the information of what to do next in a way which is non-technical, in language that you understand, and providing you with the next steps to help get the support to fix the issue. So Dominic and our other co-founder Matt have worked very hard on creating a huge number of tests that are very technical. What my team have been working on is translating that information. So that's, I guess, a lot of the interface between Dominic and I is what is logical to Dominic isn't to me necessarily. And so that's what we spent a lot of time on as well.
It's interesting because as a founder myself, I completely understand that, yeah, you want to protect yourself, but in the same time, you don't really think that you're at risk, as you mentioned. And usually you think about, when you see data breach and all these cyber attacks, you think about big corporations who handle way too much data, too much that they can't really handle it, and you think it's not really for you, and so you just think about the minimum you can do, but there is much more that you don't really know about. So in terms of the model, how does this work? I haven't really found a pricing page on your website, so I was wondering, in terms of the onboarding, it seems to be super straightforward and super easy. Yeah. But then what's about the pricing model if you're targeting SMEs especially?
Yeah, so we're still discussing the exact price, but the idea is this is kind of like a small business has Xero or QuickBooks for their finance. It's a small, affordable monthly fee that they just sort of pay and forget about in a way. So we're talking, not sure on the exact price, but it's around that kind of level. It's something that to a business of 10 staff, they really wouldn't think too much about. And really, we had this phrase that we think that Dominic and I sort of came to the same point on, which is that it's a burglar alarm for the internet. It's just something you subscribe to. It sits there in the background. It's watching your back. Versus competitors of ours, I guess if we look into a wider space of enterprise solutions, which are just unaffordable for small business. So that's my take on it, Dom. I don't know, without looking exactly.
You're right. For the bigger organisations and our competition, their enterprise space, they deal with tens of thousands of pounds a year for services that I actually don't think are as good. They don't have as many tests, and they do a lot of things that our customers don't need, right?
Yes.
And typically, when you buy enterprise software, it takes you 6 months, to do it. You run loads of meetings and loads of trials and proof concepts. And again, we go back to the concept of trying to make it as simple as we can. So the pricing also aligns with that, right? There's a simple, very small monthly fee that is not going to break the bank. It's not going to cause you to really worry about this. It's not going to be a barrier to you saying, you know what, I can deal with cybersecurity. By helping everybody get secure, we're helping everybody get secure, right? So the more people that buy this service that secure their systems, the securer and safer the whole internet is, and therefore the safer it is for everybody. So we really sort of see that and say everything we do is around making it easy for people to get secure, and the pricing is just another element of that.
I'm wondering, Ashley, you've been attacked. Cyber attacked. What happened in this situation? Like when you're a small business, I can't even start thinking about the different the steps. I mean, when I got my phone stolen a couple of months ago, it was just a phone, right? But I wasn't the first thing I thought was about the data on my phone, and then I thought anyway, people who steal phones on the street, they're here for the hardware, not the content of your phone. So if I just sign out remotely of everything I have, then it will be fine. No one is going to try to force to get into my phone to find my selfies or my food pictures. Doesn't make sense. What about for your company? Because you've been attacked for your data. So where do you start when this happen?
So, my first experience, because you have to bear in mind, Dom and I, we're going climbing every week. We're talking about cybersecurity. But the first experience I had was I came into the office on a Monday morning. One of my members of my team had come in. He said, Ash, the website's down. I said, oh, that's a bit weird. So we went on the website. It said some Google alert, this site can't be trusted. And then we realized very quickly none of our emails were working. Then about half an hour after that, I got a phone call from a client I was working with, saying that all of our emails had red flags all over them. And then, so it was all going a little bit haywire. Now, obviously, I'm a co-founder of a startup, or we were in the beginning of our conversations then, I guess. Dominic, I've known a long time, so obviously I was first on the call to Dom going, what on earth is going on here? So what transpired was months earlier, someone had hacked into now Dom might correct me, but as I understand it, hacked into my hosting of my domain and had put some pages there that I didn't know were there. And then they were using them in some kind of phishing scam. They were sending people to those pages to do something. And so I was being blacklisted. Now, I understand the principle of being blacklisted in the wider world, but I didn't know there are things called blacklists on the internet. And I think Dominic said when I hit the 14th global blacklist after the 3 or 4 months, the whole of everything shut down. So basically we were deemed, persona non grata by the internet. So it took Dom... With Dom's help, I think Dom's just cut off. It took with Dom's help. Back again. It took with Dom's help about 4 days to sort it out. So that's with someone that I was working with on a cybersecurity startup who I knew how to fix this problem. If I hadn't have had Dominic, then a whole other thing opens up. Who would I have gone to next? Would I have been able to trust them? I'd have been opening up all my systems to someone new. It could have been weeks. So my thought before was always, at the time, my business was a video agency. Why would anybody hack a video agency? I don't sell anything online. My data is video footage, which we don't even store on the internet. But I think what I realized through this and going on the journey with Cyber, I'm now speaking to a lot of other business owners, is small businesses are like an easy win for hackers. The people that are hacking small businesses are not, like, what's his name, an iRobot sitting with a hoodie. They're using very basic tools that you can buy for pennies on the dark web to just slam through brute forcing passwords, etc. They're just, we're small, we're easy picking. And actually for a hacker to hack 100 small businesses that probably make just as much money as the challenge of trying to hack a business that Dominic is doing the IT security for, where he's spending hundreds of thousands of pounds. So yeah, that was my situation.
Yeah, the advantage to hacking a small business, well, firstly, as you say, Ash, already, is they don't have any security, so they're easy, right? Would you try and break into a house that's got the door and windows wide open, or Fort Knox, right? It doesn't matter that one's got a ton more money. You're going to break into the easy one and steal what you can.
Yep.
But also, the small companies don't know that they've been hacked. I mean, the average company, even the larger companies, tend not to know for 3 to 6 months that they've been hacked. Small businesses might never spot it. And to a hacker, that means they've got access to your data and your resources for a very long time, and they can get a lot of information out of that. They're typically not after the data of a small business. They're after the hardware. They're after the infrastructure, and they use that to target other businesses, and they grow and they grow and they grow. So a small business that has 1 or 2 little servers is just as valuable to a hacker, because they can use those servers to host phishing sites, fake looking bank sites that they then send other people to harvest their credit card details or their bank details. So actually, the small businesses are even more target.
Which was exactly my situation, because Dominic rang me up when he was going through my domain, and he said, "Is Bank of America one of your clients, Ash?" Because we work with, lastminute.com and the British Museum, big clients. I was like, "No, I don't work with the Bank of America." He's like, "Probably these pages are not your pages, so you shouldn't be here." So yeah, it sounds like that was exactly what happened to me. Yeah.
But thanks a lot for sharing, because I think when this kind of thing happened to you, even if it's about business, it's also slightly professional. Like someone got into your thing, and even if you put some distance between your own company and yourself, it's still an attack on you and what you do. So I guess.
And on your reputation, because in terms of our marketing strategy, what I think is very important, the audience we're trying to get to, I call them audience because I ran a film company, the customers that we need to get to don't know that they need us yet. I think it's a bit akin to life insurance or something. It's something you think might happen, but you don't really want to worry about it. It's not important to you. So we need to educate. And I think a very powerful way of educating is through storytelling, playing on my background, and personal stories, because you can identify with another human being much easier than a set of features and benefits. And so we've got a lovely story from a business owner called Warren, who runs a metal fabrication business, right? This is a salt of the earth, salt of the earth, lovely guy, family business. Like, why would a hacker attack a machinery company in South London? But one of his companies, through quite a common sort of CEO fraud, I think you described it as, Dom, basically got access into their email, sat there watching what was going on, copied their invoice template, and then set up a domain similar to theirs, and then emailed their customers and managed to get £20,000 out of one of their customers. Now, the really challenging thing for his reputation is it was technically his customer that got hacked. So he wasn't responsible for that £20,000, but reputation-wise, that was devastating. And because he got so worried about it, on their emails now, it basically has a sort of thing saying, "Please confirm this isn't spam." Like, he's gone so far the other way that when you read his emails, you're like, should I be worried about this? So it's really those personal stories. I think if people are able to be open in some degree, obviously, that transparency within business, you want to be trusted, you want to be respected. But I actually think an openness to discuss these things is more important. And luckily, we're finding some really fantastic stories that I think will get people in the door to understand the relevance of what we're selling here.
What are the foundation to be protected? Like, is there maybe 2, 3, 4 things that people should be doing to protect their businesses, especially in the early days? And simple things like turning up something or adding another level of password or whatever. Is there some very basic, simple things to do?
Dom's got the answer for this, but the answer is, you've heard the answer numerous times. Obviously, our first answer is get cyber alarm.
Sure.
But aside from that, Dom.
Well, I tell you, so firstly, the really basic stuff should be done. And you'd be shocked at how many people don't do the basic stuff. How many people have a password of password right? And that's just such an easy one to change and to fix. So do the basics. Turn on password security. Turn on two-factor authentication. But actually, CyberAlarm is the best thing you can do, because the next thing you need to do after you've done the basics is know what you've got to protect. Right? Understand what is your estate, what is your IT, what are your IT assets. So you've got a website, you've got email, you've got a domain. I mean, even Ashley, as an example, had 3 or 4 domains that he sort of knew about, but didn't realize that they were related, and they all are. So monitor and know what you've got, and be prepared. You're going to get hacked. Right? Everybody's going to get hacked. It's one of those things. It's no longer a sort of a maybe. It's going to happen. So make sure you're ready for it. Make sure you know. Again, know your password so that you can log in and try and fix it. Know the access URL for the control panel so you can log in and fix these things. Make sure you know who to call, so that when something does go wrong, you can deal with it. Because at the point it goes wrong, it's kind of too late, and you struggle and you panic, and you end up spending a lot of time or money, or just leaving your site or your systems offline, or out there sort of acting maliciously on behalf of some hacker. So the two things are: do the basics and then know what you've got, right, and be prepared.
And actually, when you sign up for CyberAlarm, we present you at the moment in quite a simple way with a page of information that kind of outlines that, right? We're not a magic formula. It requires some responsibility on your part that you need to know how to get into your different platforms. You need to know who you're going to call. I mean, my main observation from a non-technical perspective is actually education within a small business. I think actually, if I had at an earlier stage taken cybersecurity seriously and sat down with my team for 40 minutes, maybe an hour, I could have done it in half an hour, just to say, we all have a responsibility for the security of this company. It doesn't take a lot. There are some simple steps, but we have to take them seriously. Immediately, those hygiene factors would have made us vastly more cyber secure. But we weren't doing that. We were, the same password was being used on different services. We weren't changing passwords when people left the company, just really basic stuff. And so I think that awareness is to me the biggest piece of this. It doesn't need to be complicated, but you need to be responsible, and that doesn't require weeks of time. That can be, a half-hour stand-up with the team over a coffee.
Yeah, talk about cybersecurity with your staff and with your board or with your teams. Just make sure it's not forgotten about and sort of brushed under the carpet. The more you talk about it, the more you're going to protect yourself, just naturally, through saying, oh yeah, we should reset our passwords, we shouldn't do this. So just talk about it, and you'll find that will, on its own, that will increase your security status.
Now, talking a bit more about the company itself, you mentioned several times the team, the fact that you've known each other for quite some time, but also you're very different. And something that got my attention on your website is that I haven't really found a specific job title for the three of you. So it's like you're co-founders. So I definitely want to know more about your team, your third co-founder, how it all started, when it started. You said you've been talking together about cybersecurity for a long time now. So I definitely want to know more about the company itself.
That's probably a better one for you.
Better one for me. So in terms of titles, so there's, we have various members of our team around us, but there's 3 of us. And so effectively when the company builds and hits the targets we're aiming for, which we're being ambitious with, Dom is the CEO. It's his vision. He came up with the idea in the first place. I guess my view when we first started talking was that I was lucky enough to be able to sort of frame that and help him in that vision, and then we sort of shared the workload between us to move it forwards. So CEO, I guess you might classically call me the CMO. I'm coming at it from the customer's perspective, the marketing, the growth, and then our other key partner is Matt, who is effectively Dom. I think I'd be right in saying our CTO. And actually, Dom, you might want to say how Matt came into this, because I think that's really fundamental. Because when I first understood it, when Dom first talked about it, it was the fact that there's all these technical tools that techies use that people like me don't know about and would be scared by, and that we were going to curate those together and present them in a way which was easy and approachable. And I think there was a realization which then led to Matt, which Dom might want to talk about.
Yes. So the original plan was just to use other tools and other people's products, and help people either find them or just we would collect them, we would monitor them for them, and then tell people what's going on. And those tools, and then, by the way, there are hundreds of them, and actually it's a really important point to mention. It's not one Ash likes me talking about because it's not great for marketing, but most of the things you can do on Cyber Alarm, you can do somewhere else as well. But what we do is we bring together everything. We use the experience of myself and of Matt to say, here are the things that you need to be monitoring and need to be watching out for. But so back to the point, we were using some of these tools, and actually they weren't very reliable. They weren't giving us the answers we needed. They were giving a lot of false positives, or just a lot of noise. So at that point, we decided that actually we need to do these tests ourselves. They're not particularly complicated for a technical perspective and for a technical person, but I suppose to a non-techie, they're like black magic. So we said, look, we need to get somebody who can write these tests ourselves for ourselves. And that's where Matt came in. We looked around. We used my network of security engineers and CISOs and that sort of thing, and we found this guy Matt, who's an absolute genius, right? He's worked for Vodafone and HSBC and those sort of people as a security engineer, and he can write every test so far that we've found. He's been able to write an equivalent himself, which has meant we don't need to rely on other companies so much. We've been able to build this platform completely on our own infrastructure, and therefore, actually, again, go back to your point about pricing earlier, we don't need to pay these other services. Once we built this once, it scales infinitely. So that's really helped us keep the price down and tailor the actual tests we do.
And
I think the other key point with the third co-founder is, as I said, Dominic, I think, were we 8 or 7? I mean, we've known each other since we were kids. And Dom sometimes uses the word fluffy with some of my stuff. I don't know if you know about Myers-Briggs personality tests. Dominic very kindly did one. I'm probably not his cup of tea or whatever. But essentially, we're opposite ends of the spectrum. And I looked up on Google, how do these two people work together? And it basically said, you are opposites. And if you trust each other, you'll get a lot done. And that worked brilliantly for like 8-9 months. We were getting so much done. And then we started to come to these challenges. And by bringing Matt in, that third bit of the triangle, it's really, I think, jet propelled everything. Because then there is a kind of interface, right? There's what Dom is talking about from a technical perspective, but from my communications perspective, the relationship that I've developed with Matt in really understanding the behind the scenes, under the hood, what's going on, or trying to, and really digging into how to communicate that in language I understand. That's been very powerful as well. So I really, I've run my own business where I set it up. It was just my thing. And I did that for 15 years. It's been a pleasure to share the load and to achieve so much more by having great co-founders to work with.
I'm curious, how does this translate on a daily basis? Because I have the same with my co-founder. I would definitely not ask him to do a personality test because he will say no. I know already. But we're exactly in the same situation. So how does this work on a daily basis? Does this mean that you're just doing your thing and just talking together on the higher level and not necessarily sharing the detail? Or how does this translate being so different?
I think Ash's point earlier is about trust, right? We trust each other. We know what each other's skills are, and we try quite hard to sort of say, well, that's your thing. I don't fully understand it, but if you tell me that needs to happen, that's what you do. So we do kind of let each other run. We sit down and talk twice a week, and we just check in on what each other's up to, and we talk about the strategic direction and any problems we're having. But other than that, we let each other use their skills and do what they can do, and only jump in when we need to.
I think the main challenge, I think, is all about trust. I think as co-founders, you have to respect each other. You have to really value the person and you have to trust them. I think that the challenges we've had along the way have actually been sort of outside influences. So, for example, we've all put money into this business. We're not getting paid anything yet. We're at that stage. It's bootstrapped. Dom is a certain level of job. You've got a day job that's paying you a salary. Matt similarly, but I run my own company, and I think there was a bit of a challenging time with what we were doing when actually with that business that was occupying a lot of my time. And so to be fair, the load was on Matt. Matt was working flat out, and I didn't have time to give to the business. And I think that's challenging with co-founders, where you're going, hold on a minute, I'm working full time on this and I can see you're not. But luckily, because I'm marketing and sales, I did this bit at the beginning around the brand and the look and feel and the messaging, and we did some work there. And then for probably 5-6 months, I was, one day a week or contributing a bit. But luckily, maybe due to COVID, my life has fundamentally shifted in terms of my other career and how that works. And it's meant that at this time I've been able to put my full attention on Cyberalarm, and that's luckily, exactly the time that I needed to, because the product has been ready to go for the last few months. That's why you can't buy it yet, is we're just obsessively making sure that everything works and everything's reliable and everything's stable, and that's been the priority, and the messaging in it is perfect. But now I'm fully focused on the task of getting our customers on board and building towards the targets that we have.
And that's the point about trust, right? When I'm super busy, and maybe Ash isn't, I trust him that okay, he's gonna be super busy later on. So actually now Ash is doing tons of work, probably more than me, right? Because we're at the point where it's all around marketing and getting that brand out there, getting the message out, right? So the balance always shifts, and it's constantly changing. And so we trust each other to say, well, yeah, you don't have a lot to do at this point. No problem. I'm going to just focus on my bit, but we know full well that that's going to be fair in the long run, because we're each going to chip in everything we can at the right point.
One other little thought, and of course we've got to throw into this COVID and the whole situation that's happened. There's more change going on in the world than we're definitely living in historic times. We paused briefly during that, and then we realised very quickly cyberattacks are going through the roof, and we need to accelerate what we're doing. But that was at the same time that I was effectively mothballing and making my staff redundant and moving out of my office. So there's quite a lot to get your head round, but I've been very excited that actually I'm just looking forward and haven't dwelled at all on what's going on. So we've carried on achieving an awful lot during this time.
I can't agree more, because I've also been in some kind of bubble since the lockdown started in London, and working full time on it with my co-founder, that changes a lot of things. Like the entire situation changes your perspective, your approach, and your involvement, and also it's super important at the moment where everything you're doing is kind of put in not in consideration, but you kind of reflect on how you spend your time, and where your head is. Has the situation, COVID-19, changed your approach for the launch, in not just your time and your personal time, but also your approach for the launch, or your customers and target audience approach to cybersecurity?
So that's a question for me. I mean, fundamentally, for one, we were going to start with the soft launch and going live, and then when we did a proper launch, just leveraging a lot of interconnections to pull off an event at which we were going to launch a report, a bench press sort of survey that we were doing. So my thought was that I've worked in marketing and communications for 15 years. And so I'm going to play to my strengths of the things I know about. So one of those is video. So there's an element of the strategy that's around video. But bearing in mind where we're at right now, the focus is on partnerships and relationships and cross-leveraging audiences. So, for example, we're doing a partnership with an accountancy organisation that has 1,000 customers. We're doing a survey with them, creating a report that makes the accountancy organization look good because it shows that they take cybersecurity seriously. It looks good to their customers. It's good for us because it gets us access to this survey data. We're then joining up with some other organizations like the Federation for Small Business, the Digital Catapult, which we're part of. We're part of the cohort from what's it called? Cyber 101. We're part of the program there. So leveraging all of that to really, because I think the main challenge, first of all, is building authenticity and trust, both in our brand and also really to start to educate people that cybersecurity is of relevance to them. So of course, when we've got our initial leverage, our initial traction, our initial PR, have some plans there as well. Then we start to build and we start to really push on digital marketing. So at the beginning, we'll be dipping our toe in to learn from, I guess, digital marketing, but we don't want to be spending, thousands and thousands of pounds on low value initial customers. I want people who have had a number of interfaces with us, filled in the survey, read the report, attended the event, etc., and then use paid media for retargeting. So once someone's come to us, that they then continue. That's kind of the initial strategy, in a nutshell.
And from a client perspective, it's changed the world of cybersecurity. So we think a little bit differently now. If you go back before pre-COVID, it was moving this direction anyway. But people mostly worked from the office. The office had a office security, and there was an IT person who would make sure, or somebody responsible for IT who would make sure the PCs were installed and up to date. And there was a firewall, and your file stayed within the office environment. COVID has just absolutely accelerated the destruction of that whole way of working. Right, there is no more a walled garden. Right, there's no more safe area that a company can protect. Your data is everywhere, your users are everywhere, and your systems are absolutely everywhere. And so the traditional security tools aren't very valuable. Putting up firewalls to make sure nobody can break in isn't very valuable anymore. It still has its place, of course, but what people need now is new tools that secure the internet for them, and that's what CyberAlarm does, right? It looks at what are all the platforms that you have, where are your people, and where is your data, and how do we keep an eye on all of those things and tell you when there's something that's going to expose any one of those elements that are not within your control.
Yeah, it's super key now that everyone has to work remotely. Whether they will adopt this on the long run or not, they need to do something right now, right? To adopt something.
Yeah.
And just moving people remotely was already a big step for some companies. Not for everyone, not necessarily for startups, but
I think it's a very exciting time for that. I mean, I'm talking to you, and I don't mean to make people feel jealous, and I'm sorry for this, but I'm talking to you from a hill in Ibiza. So I made a decision with my family to rent our house in London and to move out here. We had a place here and we hadn't been here for a year. And really interestingly, the co-working space, an amazing co-working space that I work from here called The Hub. When I left here a year ago, there was, I think, 60 members. There's now 270. And all of that growth is people who have made the transition. They're all remote workers. They're all people who are working off the island. So I think it's an incredibly exciting time for remote work. So I think if a company can use a service like CyberAlarm, and that gives them some confidence that they can culturally be very positive about people home working and seeing that as a positive and trusting people, and using our tool as part of that, I think that's a fantastic opportunity, and I see that a lot of companies are embracing that change.
You don't need to say anything to make us jealous, because right now in London, for the entire week, it has been raining. It's super
It's
grey.
been raining here.
Yeah, like
Sunny
non-stop.
this
It's
morning.
so dark outside. Like you can't just stay at home without your light or anything. Like it's so dark outside. So just seeing outside behind you, seeing that you have a
That
blue sky.
is not there, is it?
No.
That's the only thing is reliable internet. The co-working space is great, but my house is a bit unreliable, but there we go. We deal with small challenges.
Okay, so during the pandemic also, you have launched, Ashley, a side project, and Dominic, I didn't know, but you also have a job. So Cyber Alarm is actually your side project. It's interesting because I've read something this week, an article really briefly that mentioned that it was super healthy for founders to have something on the side, to have side projects, and to start building something. And I'm wondering, do you think that because when you're building a startup where it takes time, you need to do the development, it's very a long-term thing, do you think that having something that is easily actionable, or that where you can see direct results, do you think that it really helps you focusing and being more focused on everything you have to do on the startup?
Shall I start that one, Dom?
Sure, go for it.
So without too much emphasis on it, during lockdown, my video business disappeared. I had no revenue coming in, and my wife isn't working. So tried to pivot a bit within video, but I wasn't very interested in live video. And I just had this little idea, it wasn't particularly unique, around delivering plants and flowers to people's doors for their garden. I had some contacts. My wife had worked in the garden trade. And so we had that idea on Tuesday. We built the website Wednesday, Thursday, organised our supply chain on Friday, launched on Saturday, and by Monday morning we had 320 orders. So then we had to get 6 drivers, so a cameraman that worked for me, a neighbour, a friend. We got a golf course to lend us their car park. And by the second week we had 600 orders. I think we had 970 in total over lockdown. It was exhausting, exciting. I didn't make as much money as you'd hope for the amount of effort. It was relentless. However, in terms of Cyber Alarm, of course, fundamentally different business, right? Lockdown Gardener was a reactive lockdown business delivering plants, and we're a technology business. However, that gave me such a degree of confidence in having an idea and building a customer base quickly. Literally with Lockdown Gardener within days. And I think with Cyber Alarm, I'd maybe slightly lost track of it. It's taken us over a year to get to this point. And in the back of my head, I'm still thinking, well, will anyone actually buy this? and so doing that side hustle has actually instilled me with a great degree of confidence. And in our targets, I've put them up because I've thought that before my expectations were too low. And I've seen that reality happen. So for me, having side hustles is good. I guess the main challenge is how do you balance that? Yeah. If I disappeared off and spent, I'm sure Dominic, when he knew I was driving a van 3 days a week, was thinking, well, what time are you spending on? But these things work out. You have to trust each other. But for me, it's very important to have other things to bounce off. And Dom, I know, has various.
Before you add your own experience, Dominic, I just want to add that it also changes the way people understand what you do from an external point of view. So I've been talking to a bunch of people in like podcasters, but also investors, and sometimes they got a bit confused about everything that's on my LinkedIn profile or everything I've been doing, and it can be actually sometimes a bit annoying when you have to explain, no, this is a side project, this is a main project. Don't get confused. I'm still 100% into this project. Just I do also other stuff. Also the external point of view from people who don't really get what you do on a daily basis and where you spend your time.
Yeah.
Ash spent ages. I was going to say, Ash, you spent ages really winding me up, actually, telling me to change my LinkedIn profile so that it properly reflected the different things that we do. I had a very corporate LinkedIn profile that showed my corporate background and big business, and now Ash, using his marketing skills and his creative genius, has redeveloped that, redesigned that. With a bit of resistance from me, but that now shows quite well the different things that we do.
Yeah, I guess for me, in terms of Cyber Alarm, my main concern is cybersecurity is very serious, and if you look into my background, it doesn't necessarily. I'm not a cybersecurity expert, but I need to position myself in the right way in why I'm doing this, and so. As Dominic says with LinkedIn, we've had some fantastic support from a contact of mine, Laura Fox, who worked for LinkedIn for 15 years. And she's helped me with my profile. So really the pitch is I've set up Cyber Alarm as you know, I work on Cyberalarm because I'm a small business owner and I understand small business. So it's a service for businesses like mine. That's the way round I now position it. Cyberalarm is number one priority in my life, but the other things that I do support me learning things that make Cyberalarm a better product.
Dominic, also, you mentioned that you have a more, let's say, corporate background and corporate experiences. How is it for you to jump into such adventure? Because it's very different mindset, approach, pace. Everything is very different. So, has there been any specific challenges or any specific thing that you wish you knew before getting into this adventure?
Well, so I mean, I've got a corporate background, but also back in 98, 99, I launched an online business selling computer games. This was about the time, this was before Amazon was well known. And I actually built a shop, an e-commerce site, and sold games. It wasn't massively successful. I'm not Jeff Bezos now, which is a real shame. But it means, for the last 20 years, and since then I've done a few little projects. Some have been successful, some haven't. But it means I've always had that sort of balance of big corporate world and startup culture. And even in my corporate experience, I've worked for companies of hundreds of thousands of staff and smaller companies with 50 staff. So I've always had a fairly good balance. I suppose the biggest challenge to me is that Cyberalarm is not generating revenue at the moment. We're pre-revenue, and so it's hard to appreciate things I would just go and buy without thinking, and things I would do without thinking in another organization. We have to say, well, is that really valuable? Do we have to do that right now? Really small things, like zero. It's only 30 quid or 20 quid. But thinking, do we have the basic package or the sort of the next level up? It's some advantage, but can we really afford it? Can we do without it?
Yeah.
So I think that's probably the biggest challenge is approaching things differently, and not having a huge team to go and call on, having to do things yourself, having to make those decisions based on cost. And it's my money this time, right? It's my money. It's Ashley's money. And actually. The flip side though is by having this other job, that's how we've been able to fund it, and that's been really important to me, and I know to Ash and Matt as well, that we don't really want a lot of external investors at the moment. This is our idea, it's our concept, and it's not particularly well defined yet. So I don't want somebody else coming in, a big corporate VC fund or something, and changing the direction or the spirit of the business. We know what's going to be successful. I think it's still early days, right? The product isn't. One of our challenges Ashley's got is how do we advertise this product, because no one's searching for it at the moment, because no one knows this type of product exists. So we're ahead of the game there, and we are shaping what this industry will be like. So back to my earlier point, by having the job, I can invest and I can plow in a lot of money, or as much money as I can, into the business without having to dilute the vision.
As soon as you get external money, I agree. Well, I'm not personally too worried about having people changing things and shaping my vision, but for sure you need to know, like, you want to be in a strong position, and for that you need to be able to explain how you're going to make money. You need to have a very defined vision for the product. Even if technically you can have some liberties, you need to really have a clear plan on how you get money, when you're going to get money in, and yeah, definitely bootstrapping gives you the time to get your head around those big questions.
Yeah, I think. Oh, sorry. I was going to say, we're not a viral social media product where we need millions and millions of users for the thing to be viable. What's great is that we've self-funded this. Now, the initial step isn't that huge for us just to be sort of breaking even, ticking over. That first step is challenging, but it's not implausible. But we will need support in terms of funding, but we want to do that when we've said, right, we had this many customers on day one, times 2, times 5, times 10, times 20. You can see there's a growth curve. Now let's talk about money. I don't want to talk to someone when it's, dependent on if this thing happens.
Yeah, and when the product is a bit more mature, right? So we can say, look, here is the product, we know it works, right? We've pivoted already, quite heavily from the original idea, which was a bit more complex. It had 3 pillars, and it had a physical thing that you plugged in, and it had some software that you installed. We've taken those out, and I think if we'd have had investors at that stage, they'd have been very worried about that, and they'd have, we may not have been able to do this, or we may not have been able to quite design the system the way we think is best.
Yeah.
So we can do that later once we've proven it, right? Once we've got the first few thousand customers on, and we can say it does work, right? The industry and the market is growing around us, and people appreciate the service now.
We've also met each other through a program, and Ashley, you mentioned that you're part of the Digital Catapult Cyber 101. How did you find being part of such community? Is it something that you'd recommend to founders, to early stage founders, to join this kind of programs or any accelerators? I don't think that you've been through any proper accelerator, but do you think that it's a good thing for founders to join such programs to get the support of the community or meet other founders?
I think we've been approached by a lot of accelerators, but we've been very clear that we're not prepared to give anything up to be on any of those programs. For us, Cyber 101 was a no-brainer. I think anything from a marketing perspective, anything that gives us some credibility, on our website, we can say we're a cohort of Cyber 101. Someone on our website might not know what that means, but it shows we're part of something. There's opportunities to work with the Digital Catapult around our report and the event that we're trying to do, for example. I don't know Dom's view on it. My view was that it was interesting there's some great support they gave, educational support. There was like a course that we did. That was useful. It was useful to stand up and talk about the product. What I found most useful was having to stand up and pitch cyber alarms to a room full of people who were working on quite complex, very expensive cybersecurity products, where my observation was that they thought that what we were doing, some comments, that it was a bit too simple almost, that it wasn't covering all bases, that it wasn't, at the cutting edge of AI and tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of pounds for the service. And that actually excited me more, because it made me think that within this industry, I think there's still not really a grasp that there are millions and millions of small businesses where the steps we're taking will be transformative for their businesses. At a low monthly fee, the tests that we're doing will be transformative for their businesses. And so that's the main thing I got from it. I found a lot of value from things like the tech, Dom, you have to remind me the name, the Founders Network.
Tech Nation.
With other founders. Yeah, with other founders.
Founders Network.
Yeah, I found stuff like that the most valuable. People who are doing very different technology businesses, but just throwing ideas around. But Dom, I don't know your view.
Yeah, no, I agree with you, Ashley. I think it was interesting. It's certainly valuable to do, but I think there's a lot more value in just getting out and doing these things and learning. I think one of the advantages for our team is that we've got a wide experience base, right? We've got Ashley's got a lot of marketing, and he's run his own businesses. I've run my own businesses. So we've already done a lot of this stuff. We've learned. We know how to do marketing. We know about finance and accounting. We've got some pretty good ideas on how to pitch and that sort of stuff. Okay, we're not experts. We're not best at it. But I think for us, the value is just getting out and doing things.
Is there any other resources or, I don't know, I asked this to all my guests to make sure I add any links on the description of the video. So any books, any program, any communities, any article, anything that you could find interesting and helped you at some point as a founder, as an early stage founder?
I like to read a lot. There was... I don't remember the name of that book I lent you, Dom. It was about boring businesses.
Oh, yeah.
It was like entrepreneurs I forget the name. I'll send it to you.
Unsexy Business, I think it was.
Unsexy Business.
I can't remember the author's name.
It was basically all these entrepreneurs who made lots of money with things that weren't inherently that interesting, but actually fascinating under the skin. So that was really key for me, because, as I say, I had no interest in this area, so how do I make it sexy? There's a book called Sprint, is there? I mean, from my perspective, I had no idea about that process when I started with Cyber Alarm, about how sprints worked and how the process worked. So again, I'll send you the link, but I found that book very helpful. And the other one that I keep dipping, Lean Startup.
Okay.
It's great. But I'm always seeking, I think the main thing I'd say about is, and Dom might be different from me, but for me, I always seek counsel from experts or mentors or people who know more than me, or people who've already been on the journey before. I'm a huge advocate for that. I've had with my business before a business coach, a life coach. I'm really open to those things. So I think that's been very valuable. So I've had some incredible actually opportunities that have come out from me just reaching out on LinkedIn and saying, I love what you guys are doing. Xero, for example, what they did with their partnership program, I was fascinated by that. So I just contacted someone there, and that's opened up something very interesting as a line of communication. So reaching out to people and being interested in them, and just, you know, can I have 5 minutes of your time to pick your brains? A lot of people are quite open to that. Final thought, because I got very excited with this last week. There's a service called Hi Right Now, which launched literally a few months ago, which is about connecting founders together with one-on-one. It's like a gamified speed networking thing. It's brilliant, and I only heard about it last week, and I've already done 3 of them. That's great as well. I think that's me.
I'll have a look at it. Yeah.
I'll send you some links.
What about you, Dom?
Me, so for me, I take a slightly different approach. These probably aren't relevant to all of your listeners, but I'm plugged into the cybersecurity community and the tech community. So things like Meetup, I think are really useful. And I go along to a lot of the IT and the tech meetups. Anything I can find that's going to have interesting people, relevant people, and a lot of them aren't founders. They're more corporate, or they're business people, or they're just techies that don't fit into any one of those bubbles. But sometimes I do meet other founders and other business founders, and that's really interesting to find similar people in a similar industry. I think that's really quite fun. I'm also a member of the IT Livery, the City of London livery company, the Worshipful Company of Information Technologists, and they have a number of sort of panels and working groups and committees, one of which is the Entrepreneurs Panel. So I'm a member of that, and through that, I meet a lot of entrepreneurs, and we actually provide mentoring to people similar to myself as a startup founder, right? So actually, I work on both sides. I mentor other founders, as well as being a founder who needs mentoring himself.
Well, I find it quite interesting to be on both sides. I've done it too, and sometimes even if you haven't yet figured out everything, because you're also doing it yourself, taking another perspective on someone else's business can also make you think about things. Sometimes you say things about a business and you're like, well, I'm saying that, but I'm actually not doing it, and I should be doing it. And it's kind of super helpful sometimes just to put yourself in another founder's shoes and look at a different business. Brilliant. Well, I took some notes. I'll make sure to add it in the description of the video that will be available on Monday afternoon. Is there anything else you want to add before we finish our call?
I mean, your audience is, I guess, people in similar positions to us. So, I mean, my sort of one word of wisdom is, and I've always been at this philosophy for years and years and years, is thinking why not rather than what if.
Okay.
I think Dom mentioned it just then about just getting started. It would have been easy for Dom and I to just keep talking, but we didn't. We just got on with it and started to make something happen. And Lockdown Gardener, similarly, within days. So my view is fix it as you go along, just get going, work it out as you go along. But that's, I think that's my main pearl of entrepreneurial wisdom. Absolutely, from the journey I've been on so far.
Completely agree. Just start, just do it. Worst case, it doesn't work. I've had a couple of ideas that haven't worked, right? They've not slowed me down at all. They've not made me think, oh, I'm not cut out for this. Just try it. Even if you screw up, you learn something.
Yeah.
That's so true. Last thing, is there any place where we can find you if anyone is interested in hearing more about what you do and checking out, maybe registering for Cyber Alarm when it's ready? I did it yesterday, so I recommend people to register.
Yeah. So the website is cyberalarm.org. At the moment, you can register for when we go live, which is going to be very soon. So keep an eye on the website, particularly towards the tail end of October. I mean, it's Cyber Awareness Month this month, so we're working hard to get out there during this month. And personally, at this stage, I'm very open to speaking to anyone and everyone that is interested in what we're doing, that's competitors, anyone. So my email is ashley@cyberalarm.org. I'm very happy for anyone to contact me to start conversations at this stage. Dominic probably less so. I'm busy. That's what I'm doing. I mean, I guess I want to understand people better and where they're coming from and build those relationships at this stage.
Great. Well, thanks to both of you for joining me today. It has been a real pleasure to have this chat. And I'm glad that eventually you managed to be available together, because it's always very interesting to have the different perspective from different people. I mean, it's always nice to have a chat with a founder, but when you have a chat with two people from the same team, you also see the diversity of profile and what's really going on between the people within the team. So that's super interesting. Thanks a lot to both of you. As I said, the video will be on YouTube on Monday afternoon, and in the meantime, I can be reach out anytime if anyone wants to join me on the stream for a future stream, or just catch up. I'm especially available on Twitter. That's, I think, the main channel. I'm a bit everywhere, like everyone today. You have your presence everywhere. But I would say if you have to try to find me or send me a message, it's Twitter. And also, once again, we celebrated last night the 200 subscribers on YouTube. So if you haven't yet subscribed to YouTube, subscribe now, because that's where you can find all my previous interviews and future live stream and interviews. Anyway, thanks everyone for your time.
Amandine will be sharing this on our channel, so hopefully that will get you a few more subscribers as well.
Fantastic. Yeah, I'll send you the link as soon as it's live then. Thanks everyone.
Thanks a lot.
Have a good day, both of you. Bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye.